cowpea field that we wanted to take you guys to. There was no way the bus is getting in there. So a week ago or more, we had finally a 2-inch rainfall. We had 285 here, and then we had another 70 like 3 days before that. So close to 4 inches. And my county hasn't even bladed the road at all this year on the north end of it, and the other side had 2-foot washouts running down it. So this morning I ran out and grabbed it. So if you guys haven't seen, these are what a cowpea field looks like. So my nephew had a grazing field out here a couple years ago. We grazed it. Last year we put another grazing mix on it for him. He downsized herd, didn't utilize it, so we just ended up growing 3, 4, 5 foot biomass out there. Just left it. We were going to drill these cowpeas in it, thinking that all that carbon, we'll try to flush it right back into a lagoon. We'll let it build its own nitrogen. I did a horrible job of digging these up and trying to see whether they nodulized. But, you can pass that around if you've never seen what the cowpea looks like. On the sunflower field, like we were talking about, these are the fields we're going. Last year, the sunflower field I had just right down the road from here had a 1.5-inch cap because we never had moisture below 1.5 inches.
Too many things there, man.
And it was just the victim of the site we're in, right? But yeah, so this is what I just dug these out of the field over here. Glad to see we have taproot. I probably broke it as it was coming down. If you look, like I said, we still have a lot of this platy structure, but when we grit it, it crumbles, which is telling us we're gaining on soil health, but just not as fast as probably what I would want or what I'm going to achieve. We have gone backwards the last 3 years too on stuff because I can't keep residue covering the ground. If I do, I'll cycle it. What's really interesting, how many of you guys think with 5-foot sedan left where those cowpeas are, how much residue I have left out there right now? I have none. It's gone. It's bare underneath that.
Wow.
I cycled so much of that being dry. I'm not saying some didn't blow away. It very well could have blown away with the springs we're having.
You're planning on harvesting these, right?
Yes. Yes.
What do you think your CO2?
Yeah, I got a few seeds.
What do you think your CO2 respiration is on that piece?
We've done Haney tests. I'm really horrible about not memorizing those. Also, when you have 5,000 acres, there's no way you can remember how which one is which, on that too. But a lot of fibrous roots. What we're noticing is the biology we're using in furrow. The sunflowers really are stimulating with the roots. They just pop and explode out everywhere. Pass that around if everybody wants to. Don't feel like if you make a mess, it's no big deal. It's a shot. It can be sweat. Michael's been up to this field. Other people, if you've been on my farm, you've seen this. So where we have what is going to simulate what we're going to look at out here, over here, up here, but this is probably an 8.6 pH soil. I'm very close to my parent material, limestone. Highly degraded. When I took over, my parents were the first to, put a CRP in. All this land we're going to look at today, it wasn't CRP. I broke it back out in the early 90s. They got their first 10 years out of 80, from 84 to 94. We broke it back out. Probably the reason why it was CRP is this is not great, right? But we have built carbon in this sandy, rocky soil. We do have some, a little bit of black structure, that we're building in this. If you go very deep, what you can see is it all used to look like this. A big chunk of it was just white. And so now when you can see a little bit of 2-inch or 1 inch or 3 inches of actual soil building on top of this where we got some duff. This used to grow 5 bushel wheat, and then after covers and building this up, we've got it to where you could probably grow 30 bushel wheat on the same ground with the same fertility and everything else you wanted to do on that. So feel free to, come up when we're done here and look at that. So this is our arch nemesis, right? Everybody that knows this is windmill grass. So if you want to pass that around and feel the denseness of these roots for this nasty crop, it is just horrible. It's an invasive, you know, species that we have that's just, you can throw tons of fertility at, or herbicides at it, you can frost it, you can barely kill it, it just doesn't really want to die and do anything. So, where someone talked about us, you know, sweeping it, I know Roger's fought this before too. It's not economically viable to spend $70 an acre on herbicide if it's just not going to kill it. Right, you know, and I mean, you hate to promote a tillage pass, but what's a tillage pass going to cost you? $12 an acre, you know?
Problem is that's usually 3 passes.
Right, but then you got 3 passes. What we noticed was our infiltration rate will go down with the tillage. Our soil structure doesn't go away a lot, like people think, but our infiltration rates will definitely go down every time we disturb that soil. Because I thought once we did some tillage, I was going to see this land blow again in these high wind events, and we're there. We still have soil structure in that. We have the aggregates, we're there. It's just that when I broke up the glues around them by the tillage, that's what the water now I will seal off, and it won't want to infiltrate near as well. So that's what we noticed. We have gone from a lot of stuff, we can try to do an infiltration ring here in a little bit, from a lot of 8 inches an hour after 3 tillage passes down to a 1/2 inch. So, I mean, it can dramatically change in that 1 year. That now, well, I'm not saying a year and a half now when you have another crop growing, that will come back to maybe a 4 or a 3. But during that fallow period, with nothing growing, your infiltration rates drop to a 1/2 inch per hour. So it was dramatic what that had. Candy Thomas is not here. I don't know how many of you guys have met her. You know, she is a very instrumental part of guiding a lot of us on our journey when we first started. She always talks about we don't talk enough about equipment, you know. So one stop here is we're just going to show you, you know, one of the most important things for us is our drill and our stripper head out there. So for any of you that haven't got to see a no-till drill that has some modifications, I'll just go quickly through this drill and you can take a look at it. You know, we build our own crumbling discs on the back. I have tried many different modifications throughout the years of everybody's things that they had. We're fortunate to have Dale Nuss here with us. Dale actually just got done rebuilding this air seeder for me a month ago, maybe. And it's a big one. It was all new pins, boots, bushings, bearings. You know, it was a big rebuild on that. So looking to, you know, that was a big step to have us. But my boots, I just got them all out of here earlier, but we had probably close to 70,000 acres on our original set of boots. And I contribute a lot of this to we weren't planting in just hard pans all the time. If you plant into a mellow, nice seed environment, you know, our discs are lasting 12 to 15,000 acres easily, where I know some guys 5,000 a year and they're done, you know, they're getting rid of those discs. So if you're venturous enough to crawl up on top, Larry's had a problem with this before. So if you're doing an oat-based cover crop mix and you don't have something heavy in there, we actually took the little quarter pins that John Deere has for agitation in there, and we put these really long roll pins in there that stop the bridging of the oats on there. You can see what we did. So that is another modification that we did. We removed our fertilizer off of this. I'm really struggling of trying to figure out how to get fertilizer back on this because I want to put either worm castings and biology back in furrow. Instead of, right now, we'd have to broadcast it across the top on that. I still think the biology needs to be in the soil. Is the best place for it. The second best place is you can foliar feed it, but I think it needs to be in the soil. So spray it on top. Yep. Once after it's growing, right? You have leaves to help take it in. Yep. So that's where we're at there. Out here, after you're done looking at the drill, we can walk out to the stripper head. If you guys haven't seen a stripper head, I'll explain kind of how its process of how it works versus the conventional head that we have beside it. What's interesting, so this is my parents, my mom, her family homesteaded out here. She'd never known this building for the 70 years she's been alive. I think I hit the foundation right here. Didn't know, you know, I dug down, I hit a rock, there's a big chunk of something there. Don't know. I knew that they homesteaded out here, but I just didn't know what
where it was. My mom didn't know because it's never been here since she was a kid in that. So this is one of probably our highly pushed fields. Always has something growing as much as we can. It has not had a fallow period in probably 20 years. Whether it's a cover crop or cash crops, just something's always going on it. We had spring yellow peas in here. It was millet for seed production in 23. It's had so many crops, after 23, it's a lot, right? It's always had something out here. If you'd walk out a little bit farther, well, right there they are. That might be there's soil health rainfall simulator pans. I don't know if any of you have seen the rainfall simulator. This is where Candy gets a lot of her stuff from. So she'll come out here and take that and look at it. So millet last year, the year before, it had a grazing mix on it. Again, my nephew did not use it due to he just didn't need it due to downsizing on cattle. That's where some of the volunteer sedans and other stuff are coming from. The planted spring yellow peas in it. This is what we harvested. You'll probably see on the ground. They like hooked onto each other and just went flat to the ground. The stripper header did a pretty good job, but we shattered some. I will always give up some shatter to try to leave residue. And I know it doesn't look like a lot of residue out here that they left, but if I probably used a draper head or just mowed it off, it would have been a lot less than even what we had. So it worked really well. We just had to go super slow. It was like 2 mile an hour harvesting, because when you set that stripper head so low on the ground, you don't want it banging around and bouncing, or you're going to scoop up and, man, one badger hole catches you and you see a puff of dirt go flying out, and it's a little nerve-wracking trying to do that. So the volunteer millet, that just came up. That's why we didn't terminate it. So after we harvested the peas, the first flush of pigweeds was coming in this field. Because if you plant German millet for grain production, pigweeds is like your enemy. You can't get rid of it in there if you have it out here. So it came on worse than we wanted. We actually gramoxined the first go around of this. And the reason why we ran the gramoxin is because the millet was about this big, and gramoxin does not really do nothing to the grass. So that allowed me to get this little flush of volunteer millet to come up. We didn't know where it was going to go. It's kind of was more than we thought for having probably a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch of rain on it after, the pea harvest. So again, it's a free cover crop. It's just volunteer. We let it ride. This will go back to rye this fall, this field. So once these, it's hard to say, but once this gets to where it starts going into maturity to reproduction, which it's really, really close here, you can see it's starting to go into reproduction, that's when we'll spray gramoxin. The best luck we've had with gramoxin is you have to let that plant get to almost reproduction. If you spray it too early, it'll just flash it and it'll shoot off a runner or something else. So you gotta let it get a little bit on it. Drives your neighbors crazy because they think you got trash growing out here. It's a little different, but you just figured out what works in the means of that. If anybody wants to take the shovel, you can go dig around. But we have built a lot of organic matter. This was probably started at 0.7 when we started out. We're probably about 2.8 to 3 here now on this, most of this. They're setting up an infiltration ring. They're going to see what that. Okay, they already got it going. So we're going to see where our infiltration is. Typically, when you do that test on that infiltration ring, you would do a wetting and then you would do another cycle of it. Beans, we just had this 3 inches of rain, 3-4 days ago. I think our soil's probably wet enough that we'll just do the one infiltration run and see what it can. So a lot of you, if you've heard me talk, I talk about like when I see my neighbors are like, how are you planting? We're too wet, we tried, it's balling up the planter. And I've called Michael before and I've been like, it's planting really nice. And I can actually, in the tractor, feel that kind of sponginess as you're driving across out here. You do feel it change to get to that cycle on that. It's hard to tell. The cowpea field, for reference, is that field that's just right across that pasture. That is where I got your samples of cowpeas from. And then off behind Dale, that knob way on the top of it, that was where that parent material soil that I went and dug from you comes from the very top of that knob right over there. to give you some geo-reference, but it's hard to see. You know, we're pretty dark here now because it's wet, so it's hard to see our carbon line. I don't know if you'll be able to find our carbon line on here, but if anybody wants to take the shovel and dig, you'll find how duffy the top is for us out here. We still have a lot of platy structure in this soil. When we come in here, we're still platy. We break off in plates, but like we've told you on that other deal, there's a free cover crop coming. That's a pea that was doing it. But what we see is how it crumbles, you know, once it gets in there. So I know we're not fighting the true compaction from the tillage. What I'm fighting more is probably surface compaction, or a disturbance is a disturbance of whether it's chemical or tillage, right? So if I'm throwing 150 ounces of Roundup a year on this, it is a huge disturbance that soil has, that biology has to process and go to try to break down that. So millet's probably one of my favorite crops if you're grazing. I like it in a grazing mix due to it's low water use. It's like 65 days to where planting to where it wants to start putting on seed production. A lot of times it just sets out here and just hangs out. It makes it through some really tough times. Only once now since I've been farming, which would have been in 22, that we actually had millet not make it on us. It came up and sprouted and died. I just didn't have enough subsoil to hold it on. But I was going to try to do it, but the wind's going to probably mess with me. But a lot of that, when we take it, and you guys might be able to go on your own look, you'll see the saprophytic fungus working out. When you peel that residue off on the back, you'll see that white fungus that's in there. You know, that's what's breaking down our residue. It's working on all this, trying to turn it back into organic matter and cycle it back through the plant. But when you look at that root structure of that millet, I mean, it's still kind of impressive for no more than he is, but that's why they can hang on and go. So there's a fungus out here, you know. So this year we're trying a product that we're using too on that pivot that we're double cropping the milo on where the wheat stubble is, that stripper stubble. We actually sprayed, it's made by Organics, it's called Bio 800 Breakdown. And after we made that last pass, within about 4 days, we started seeing tons of these mushrooms like what you got here. Tons of these saprophytic fungus just coming in there. And it's probably the first time I've used a product where you actually put it on and you see some result, you know, on there. It's just like, I see this visual. All the straw, all that stripper straw had black spores all the way down it. So I know it's going to break down and it's doing exactly what I want to do. I want it to cycle all that tied up nutrient very fastly and put it into that milo here in another 3-4 weeks when it wants to start pushing ahead. So that's the first time we saw that the benefits of you putting that biology into where it needs to be. Out here, if I put this biology out here, man, I'd be bare, you know, and I'm not too far away from bare. That's why we want to go roll right into rye right after this to try to bring up some biomass again. And if I take that to seed production, I'll strip or stubble it. This rye will probably, you know, be this tall on me, and so I'll leave a nice residue out here, and then I can start over my sequence of, if my nephew needs grazing mix again, then obviously we can go back into that. So it was 3 minutes and 32 seconds. So when you have a wet soil, it's very rapid. So the infiltration rate on this is, you know, probably in that 8 to 12 inches per hour time frame. It just, you know, somewhere in there. It's 6 to 20. It's a broad range. I don't want to say that it's 20 inches an hour I can take in, because I don't think I could take a 20-inch hour rainfall. But these are the fields where, like, you know, right afterwards, my nephew will, like, sometimes have cattle out, and like there'll be an inch of rain or inch and a half rain, and he can drive his pickup out here the next day after it. And he's probably one of the first believers to understand the soil structure and what this is. And they're taking this to a new level because they're not mimicking what we're doing on their farm. They're doing part of what we're doing and trying to implement stuff of their own. And I think that's how regenerative ag will keep moving down the line. Is they can't, you know, we can't repeat and follow what people are doing now. You want to innovate and be pushing the envelope as far as you can on what the next generation needs to do. So.